This game is truly one of the most realistic looking FPS experiences that I've ever played. Bodycam throws all of the latest tech from Unreal Engine 5 into a new fisheye camera experience that looks creepily similar to police cam or combat cam footage. The experience goes from incredibly immersive to even terrifying at times. That said, I think there's some pretty good reasons why not all FPS games have gone down this ultra realistic body cam path, and today we're going to talk about that and Bodycam's actual gameplay. Now, firstly, Bodycam has been developed by two guys who are 17 and 20, which in itself is pretty impressive. The game is currently in early access and the devs have been patching it like crazy. They're doing what I wish I had done at their age, and the fact that two people who clearly aren't industry veterans, they're simply not old enough to be, can create something like this with the current resources available to them really is the best example of the future of indie game development. Even catching up to some of the AAA game presentations, at least when it comes to the visuals. And before we go deeper down this Bodycam rabbit hole, first I've got a quick word from today's sponsor. Today's video is brought to you by the new free-to-play game Star Wars Hunters. It's available right now on Android, iOS, and the Nintendo Switch. It's an awesome looking third-person PvP-oriented game. Check out Hunters using my link in the description. It brings a ton of iconic characters and locations from across the Star Wars universe, including bounty hunters, Wookiees, even Jawas, if you've ever wanted to blast away on a droideka, but as a Jawa, this game is certainly for you. Each character comes with unique cosmetics, animations, weapon appearances, so there's always something fresh to unlock and try out. The weapons are pulled directly from Star Wars lore, so bounty hunters get wrist-mounted flamethrowers, Wookiees have giant melee weapons, you get the idea. Hunters also features multiple PvP modes that offer different mechanics and levels of competitive play. Matches are 4v4 with each player controlling a hero of their choice. Check it out using my link below or scan the QR code. Season 1 Welcome to the Arena is live right now, and there's plenty more on the way. Alright, back to Bodycam's exceptional realism. The weapon models, the camera animations and the filters, the maps, lighting, most things in this game look incredibly impressive and cohesive. I genuinely forgot a few times that it's a PvP game, and I caught myself just admiring the visuals and absorbing the environments. It's stunning how solid this game looks on a technical level most of the time. And with AMD FSR frame generation, I was getting a consistent 120 FPS or better on most settings. I also didn't notice any major issues with hit registration, servers, or networking, which again is impressive for such a small team. And the sound design is also pretty cool, although it does occasionally make my ears want to bleed. The audio doesn't sound true to life in the sense that it simulates what you would hear with your actual ears, but it is very accurate to what you would hear from, say, a GoPro. The wind blowing into the mic when you turn and move adds this fun, realistic physicality to just moving through the world that the animations don't quite convey. The gunshots cause intense sound distortion, which honestly is close to how they might sound if you shoot without your hearing protection on, and few games have ever gotten the ear-splitting explosive power of gunfire right, although I think many of them choose not to, but this game is pretty much trying to go for the ultimate realism, and you can decide whether or not you like that. The muffled audio of the environment and enemies is also handled quite well, so you still get the sense of playing through the POV of a Bodycam, but you have just enough information to still make intelligent decisions based on those audio cues. So in terms of its actual presentation, I'd rank Bodycam pretty high up there. It's a genuinely immersive experience that feels groundbreaking and innovative. Or at least it would if it also didn't feel incredibly derivative of the other Bodycam game Unrecord that made a huge splash when it was first revealed. Bodycam's reveal trailer launched on September 13th, 2023, about a year after Unrecord's very first video was posted on the lead developer's Twitter account. In the first Unrecord video, the developer demonstrated the gameplay on an Unreal Engine Marketplace map, and while I can't really fully weigh in on whether or not this game is copied from Unrecord, it is interesting that by simply posting that preview of Unrecord so early, those devs may have opened themselves up to having their hype stolen by these devs who were able to get something to the market faster. When people wonder why studios don't announce or reveal their games until they're much closer to release, this is definitely one of those reasons. Within days of Unrecord posting their original Bodycam demonstration, people were posting plugins that could turn your Unreal game into something that looked just like it. So it's no surprise seeing a bunch of games pop up that look just like it. Now, there are some concerning parallels between the maps in Bodycam and the footage of Unrecord. Most notably is the Unreal Engine Marketplace map that Unrecord's developer first used to showcase their gameplay. Bodycam makes extensive use of this exact same asset for their Russian building map. Now, this is not to say that there's anything wrong with two games using the same assets. This is pretty much the point of having asset marketplaces so that multiple games can use those assets and change them up and use them how they want. However, two games that look nearly identical also using the same assets creates a, well, let's just say a copycat vibe. But at the end of the day, it's really up to gamers to decide how derivative games can be of one another before they take issue with it. And you do have to wonder if Bodycam is trying to cash in on Unrecord's viral success. Unrecord's trailer was so big that even my video covering that trailer achieved nearly 2 million views. So you could see why it might make sense to create a similar looking game and try and release it before Unrecord to cash in on that hype. And again, I can't say that's what's happened for sure, but it certainly does look that way. All that said, does it really matter at this point? Probably not. What does matter is the gameplay and the experience. Now, this is my first experience with any Bodycam style game, and while it's incredibly cool to see this gameplay for the first time, it's also very jarring. Aiming and camera movement are decoupled, meaning that when you aim your gun, the camera isn't perfectly aligned with your mouse movement. And there's a very large dead zone that you have to move the mouse out of before the camera will actually catch up. When you're in a match and you're sort of set up in a location and holding an angle, this isn't really a big deal. But when you're traversing the map and trying to check angles, it can make controlling your character feel like there's a huge amount of input lag. You also can't really tell exactly where you're aiming because of all the screen shake caused by the recoil and how loose the weapon animations feel. What previously felt like simple shots that I could land in a traditional FPS game, I genuinely struggled to hit in Bodycam. I wouldn't necessarily call it too excessive, but in tandem with the other issues in the game, it really does make you wonder if this game would be better off with less Bodycam stylization. The traditional camera style for first-person shooter games has been perfected and refined over the last 30 years, so maybe there's a lot of room to improve this new type of camera, but it's also possible that this is just genuinely an unpleasant experience in the long run, and it might not hold up or evolve in the ways that we want it to. Now, the lighting and realistic map design, while they look really cool on the surface, end up being pretty big gameplay problems for me. Bodycam looks absolutely great in videos and still images. The shadows in the game are basically pitch black, and characters do not stand out in them. Likewise, the crushed color palette and aggressive auto exposure on pretty much all the maps creates a lot of situations where enemies blend into the environment. And even when they don't, the visibility is bad enough that your peripheral vision feels super limited. There's also pretty obvious technical issues with how the game's lighting is rendered thanks to the game's reliance on Lumen. This is Unreal Engine 5's dynamic ray tracing system that sounds great on paper, but can be really problematic in practice. If you look at a wall next to a window and then turn your view, the light spilling in on the wall from the window will gradually fade away. So what was previously a lit wall will turn pitch black, even though it's right next to a window. Similar issues can happen on an inconsistent basis in many other situations, like walking through a doorway and having the lighting in the next room suddenly brighten up, but then doing the same thing again will make the same room much darker. It's very unstable looking with lots of temporal artifacts and bugs that'll result in players seeing different things when they should all be seeing the exact same thing. I can't fully fault the devs for this. Lumen has been heavily marketed as the new crazy awesome lighting system that devs should be using, and small devs can use it to achieve really realistic lighting quickly, but to make it so it's not splotchy and buggy requires a lot more technical know-how than most small teams can achieve. Perhaps in a few more updates to Unreal Engine 5, this will be an easier system to implement, but at the moment it's pretty janky and Bodycam absolutely shows the limitations when being used by a small team. Now, to aid with the darkness of the maps, players all have a flashlight, but if you're using it in the dark, you're basically giving away your position like a lighthouse. And while that would be great for aiding in visibility, the drones that players control after they die also have the exact same looking flashlight, and both teams have identical looking flashlights. So when you see a flashlight in a match, it could be your teammate, an enemy, or a drone, and as you can imagine, that is very confusing. Certainly immersive, but there's certain levels of immersion that I definitely want to pull back from for the sake of gameplay. Again, that's the age-old debate between realism and gamification, but I'm usually on the side that says, hey, when the realism starts to detract from the gameplay, I like to push back a little bit. Now, most of the maps currently in the game feel like the devs took Unreal Engine Marketplace assets or maps and put them into their project, made alterations to ensure players could actually traverse the maps, and then just put it into the game with very little testing or refinement. They feel like tech demonstrations of photogrammetry or simulations of real-world locations, and not really levels purpose-built to facilitate a balanced, competitive FPS experience. Airsoft House and Tumblewood in particular have lots of issues that a properly designed PvP map would avoid. Spawning in and being able to see the enemy spawn in is a pretty big issue. I tested this by standing where I spawned at the start of a round and then getting a kill 6 seconds into the match without even having to move. The map Tumblewood has its own unique issues, like one team spawning on top of a cliff that gives them overview of the whole map. And the shading under the trees is so dark that it's pretty much impossible to see the other players. And there's also only trees and terrain for cover. Some of these maps feel almost like they're the demo maps for environmental asset packs, and they just weren't really modified for PvP gameplay at all. And oddly, one of the most competitive maps in the game is that Russian building level from the Unreal Engine Marketplace, and even then, it's got a ring of windows that turn the center of the map into a 360-degree kill box, while also exposing you to the other 3 sides of the map at all times. Just because it looks good or is taken from real-life assets does not mean it's going to translate well into gameplay, and you could almost say that's sort of the theme of this entire game. Now, oddly, the developers were making a 1-to-1 remake of Nuketown and Dust 2. However, the original reveal trailer showing Nuketown was actually copyright claimed by Activision over the Nuketown remake, and the past trailers have shown snippets of the Dust 2 map. Neither of those maps are present in the current game, or seem like they'll ever be. But again, copying 2 of the most popular maps from 2 of the biggest FPS games on Earth for inclusion in your game is, let's just say, legally gray. It also kind of shows the devs' hand when it comes to their thought process behind map design. They're not making maps that cater to their specific experience designed around their mechanics. They're just going, here's a popular map that works in other games, let's put it in our game and that should play out fine, right? Well, that's rarely led to good gameplay in the past. They also have some sort of modified takes on a bomb defusal mode, which is interesting, but it also seems like it just wasn't really tested out much, where you can basically plant the bomb anywhere on the map and then the whole game mode just turns into a roaming team deathmatch experience. It really feels very half-baked in that there was a cool idea to begin with and then they implemented it and didn't do the follow-up refining and adjusting to make sure that it played out well. Now, when you're in a match, the visuals and tone of the game feels pretty cohesive, but when you go to the menus, you've got this weird copyrighted party music and an arcade look to everything. You also join the lobby with all the connected players spawning in an airplane and then dropping out of the cargo bay like PUBG. And it's just weird where a lot of the game feels hyper realistic and then at other times it almost feels like you're looking at a Roblox experience. Now, as a content creator, I feel like it is my job to inform you guys what the state of the game is like and what the gameplay is like so that you can decide where you want to spend your money. And I feel really bad about diminishing what these young developers have accomplished because it's 2 young guys who have achieved something very impressive. The level of production value on display wouldn't have been possible just a few years ago. And regardless of how potentially derivative Bodycam might be or how rough it is in its current state, it's still still a big achievement for these guys. Heavy asset use or not, making a playable game that has some really cool elements and innovations is a technical accomplishment. And it is still technically an early access game at the end of the day, which means what we're playing right now isn't the intended final product. And in the few short days since Bodycam launched, the devs have released several updates that addressed UI issues. They've added a button to automatically join matches, they fixed bugs, added a match timer, and much more. Bodycam very much is a real attempt at making a good game despite its current flaws, and I hope the devs can iterate to make the game less of a novelty and more of a genuinely competitive game in the future. But I also think that Bodycam is ultimately going to show us whether or not this whole realistic fisheye experience is here to stay or just a fad. In my opinion, the mechanics will need a lot of updating and adjusting, and even then, I'm not sure if I would prefer this stylization over a more traditional FPS camera experience. What do you guys think? It certainly makes for some great YouTube clips, but have you guys played it? What do you think of the gameplay? And if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave me a like, subscribe for more content like it, and ding that notification bell to beat the YouTube algorithm with me. Also, once again, thanks to Star Wars Hunters for sponsoring this video. Make sure you check out that game, scan this QR code, or check the link in the video description. And up next, check out this video of another highly realistic Unreal Engine 5 game using a lot of the same lighting tech, but it's set up as a competitive PvP extraction horror game, and it's pretty dope. Check out that video here, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.